So no matter who you are, if you're a photographer and you're photographing weddings, even portrait sessions, you're gonna find yourself in situations where the locations are just lousy. I'm gonna give you 5 tips to transform lousy locations in an easy way that will make any place, no matter how bad it is, look high-end and professional. Hey there, I'm Katelyn. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is a place where I like to empower photographers to build profitable and purposeful businesses while also letting you in on a little bit of the behind the scenes of our day-to-day life. And today I'm talking to you about something that affects every single photographer at some point in their career. And for me, it actually affects me more often than you would think. So I may charge $10,000 for my couples to book me to shoot their wedding, but I am not shooting $1 million weddings. A lot of times I am the most expensive vendor. I'm the most expensive part of the day, and I'm just working with couples that truly just love us. And that is such a gift to us. We love the way that our business has evolved over the years, but it means that I'm not shooting at the Ritz-Carlton. I'm not shooting at these high-end golf clubs on the coast of California. I'm not shooting at the picture perfect locations all the time. I actually shoot in some really challenging locations, like behind shopping centers and on school, like backyards of schoolyards and beside churches, besides parking lots. Sometimes I'm shooting in parking lots. And so I have really built a career. Ty, I'm not going to say this about myself, but Ty says one of my superpowers as a photographer and an educator is being able to take locations and see something completely different and make beautiful images from a really not so beautiful situation. So I'm going to teach you 5 ways right now how you can do the same. And I want to let you know that if you think like, man, I wish he explained a little bit more about this, there's actually a free PDF that you can download where I go into more detail about each one of these tips, and I give you some visual examples of each one that you could download today. It's linked below. So let's dive right in. 5 ways to transform lousy portrait locations. All right, so point number 1, tip number 1 is to get creative with your crop. So a lot of times I see photographers, they see a really pretty like walkway and they think, oh, the light is good, like it's pretty right here, but then they still shoot and they get the line of cars on like the left or right hand side of their frame. And so this can be avoided if you get a little bit more strategic with the way that you're cropping. So you're following your couple, maybe you're walking away from the venue, maybe you stop them in a location. You can make a huge shift and a huge adjustment if you just change your angle and change your crop just slightly. But if you don't train yourself to know that that's an ability that you have, then you just kind of settle for the situation. You're like, well, there is a white car in the background, but it's no big deal. You can make your images look 10 times more high end if you train yourself to block these unnatural details. It does not look high-end, bridal, and elevated, really, as a photographer to shoot with kind of bad inanimate objects in the background. So if you're photographing a bride and groom walking down a sidewalk, like the example you're going to see, it's not great to have those cars on the left-hand side. So by just literally placing myself slightly to the left and cropping intentionally, I was able to get rid of those cars, still use the line of the sidewalk, but I got rid of something that really ultimately devalued my work. So that's tip number 1, get creative with the crop. And if you see something that is really unfortunate, figure out, is there a way that I could change my angle, change how high or how low I'm shooting, and crop out that part of the image that I don't love. Just to be clear, I'm talking about cropping in camera. That is the most ideal way to apply this tip. It can be applied though in post-processing when you're cropping in Lightroom. And I actually talk a lot about this in the KJ consistency course. I talk about the power of cropping out. Like if you see just a little bit of red from a stop sign of a portrait of a bride and groom walking down a street, and you crop out that stop sign. That is so distracting. So you can apply this concept of cropping intentionally in post-processing, but I would say try to crop in camera when you're actually shooting the image. Number 2, a way to take a less than ideal location, and make it look more high-end is to use high compression lenses. So shooting with something like a 85mm, which is my favorite, 50mm even, 70 to 200. I've even taken portraits with the 135. I don't recommend it, but that is high compression. Or the new lens that I just got, the 28 to 70 2.0 R lens. These all have high compression. And when you're shooting with high compression and you're shooting with a little longer focal length, It's a lot easier to crop out some of those distractions. It's really hard to crop out distractions with like a 35mm lens. So when you are cropping out these distractions in combination with using a high compression lens, all of a sudden you have so much power to get rid of distracting elements in the background. High compression lenses mean that you have a large amount of bokeh in the background. So as soon as you focus and lock in that focus on your subject, the focus falls away right behind them. And all of a sudden you have this wall of blurry, beautiful bokeh. You can hide things like cars. You can hide things about distracting things on porches. You could hide things about, gosh, you can tell that we're in a parking lot. Like if you look at the image on the screen, this example, you can see that I have this couple literally on the side of a parking lot, and I'm using the high compression of my lens to make the background kind of fade away and blur away. And I'm creating a really soft, beautiful glow to the foreground of the image because I'm using a high compression lens. So it's not just about the background, it's also about the foreground. Using high compression lenses kind of diminishes and melts away some of the unnecessary and ugly, honestly, ugly details that you want to get rid of in a lousy location. Tip number 3, shoot vertically. A lot of times when I'm shooting in the city, this is a tip that I have to use in a less than ideal situation. So the example you're going to see on the screen is of a couple. We were shooting at the Mayflower Hotel in DC, and this was not the greatest situation because right to the right side of the street, huge construction area. So we've got orange cones, we've got construction tape. Shooting them horizontally in this location would have been almost nearly impossible. And so for any photographer, they're either going to shoot and have really ugly stuff in the background that's bright orange, or they can realize I can use this location, I can do a lot here, but I need to just shoot vertically in order to avoid all that mess. Seems simple, right? Seems very elementary, but a lot of times in the chaos of a wedding day, people forget that by simply shooting vertically, you can get rid of a lot of junk and ugly stuff that may be happening and existing in your lousy location. Tip number 4 is to create foregrounds and add beautiful, interesting composition. So the image you're going to see on the screen is one of my favorite examples of this. This couple had a very budget-friendly wedding. They had their wedding reception kind of as a part of like a neighborhood clubhouse, and there weren't a ton of portrait locations, but by finding this low-lying branch and thinking to myself, okay, if I push them further away from this branch and use this foreground as composition, I can create a really beautiful portrait. And maybe it will hide the fact that I'm just shooting them in the middle of this neighborhood road in front of an old brick church that has nothing visually interesting about it. Maybe I could create something extra beautiful by simply just thinking to myself, what could I put in front of my subject with a higher compression lens and make a really pretty foreground? Not only am I thinking about foreground, I'm thinking about how can I create lead lines and beautiful composition that leads to the couple. Honestly, in the KJ Lighting and Location course, as you go through that course, it gets more and more advanced as you go through the course. And I end the course by talking about the high-end approach of using foregrounds to make your work look like it's worth more. And this is one of my favorite things to teach. I could talk about this for an hour, but for the sake of having a concise YouTube video, I'm going to leave it with think about foregrounds whenever you're in lousy locations as a way to distract from where you're actually shooting. I just love this. I love this example. I have so many other examples that you could learn from, but this is probably my favorite tip of the 5. Create beautiful foregrounds to not only distract from where you're shooting, but create awesome compositions. And soften the image. That's another plus of that. No. Yeah, just like that,
just
Ty.
Like this.
Just like that. Yeah, see, isn't that cool? I mean, I use this all the time on wedding days. And if that was a higher compression lens, Ty, it would look 10 times cooler.
We're a little wide.
We're a little wide, yes. That's a great tip. You don't want to try that tip with a wide lens. That you need to have a higher compression, longer focal length lens for that tip. So that was for free. That was extra. Tip number 5, use your clients' bodies to get rid of distractions in the background. So an example of this, you're photographing a bride and groom walking down the street, but there are, brightly colored lamppost or a bright car in the background. Well, if your bride especially has a bigger dress, sometimes I will dip down just a little bit and use their bodies, keep them close together. So instead of holding hands, you have arm around the shoulder so their bodies are touching. You can't see in between them. Use their bodies to block out those bright, bold, and distracting elements that could be happening behind them, beside them. I use this so often, not only when I'm shooting weddings, but when a couple is maybe walking somewhere and, there's like a dog walker that crosses the street. And I want want to keep using this light. I want to be mindful of our time, but I don't want that person in the background. So I will shift my perspective and where I'm shooting from in order to make sure that that person or that distraction is blocked by my clients' bodies. And so this seems simple. It seems so easy, but a lot of times we don't do this in the heat of the moment, in the rush of a wedding day. We don't realize that by making these little tiny adjustments, we can make our images look so much more high end. So again, I love these tips. I actually love them so much that I put them in a free download. You can read all about it, more tips along with the tips that I just shared and visual examples of each. If you are new to our YouTube channel, if you have no idea who I am, you just found this video, this download will introduce you to my family, introduce you to my approach to shooting, my story. I'd love for you to take a look. So the link to that download is below. I hope this was helpful. If you find yourself in a lousy location in the future, I hope that you will reference back to some of these tips so that you can see that even if you're shooting in a parking lot with nastiness all around you, you can make beautiful portraits out of nothing. You just have to have the right tips and the right tools to make it happen. So if this was helpful, be sure to subscribe, hit the button, hit the button. As we head into wedding season, shooting season for a lot of us, I hope that this will be a great resource to you. But guys, we have so many other resources, not just YouTube videos, but that's one of our best resources. This is a great place to find free resources. If you want to make sure you don't miss one in the future, subscribe. If you want to look at all of our freebies and see what we have to offer that you don't even have to pay for, there's a link for that below. If you want to watch me shoot weddings, you can try that for free. There's a link below. But if you want access to basically almost every wedding that I've shot the last 3 years, you can pay only $29 a month, get new content every month, and have access to the entire KJ Vault. Also get $400 of gifts from all of our favorite companies in the industry as well. So there's a lot for you to look into. Thanks for tuning in. Check the links out below and have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.